Thank you everyone for joining us for Minting for Good, a special 2-day event on the new technologies brought to you by Singapore. And as you can see from the screens around the room, there are NFTs from 12 UK and Singapore-based artists, and 100% of the proceeds towards the artists and the two charities that support disadvantaged artists. So we hope that you will take some time after the session to check out the works, and if you would like to purchase a piece, the Bytehole team will be at hand to assist. Now, we have 13 content sessions across today and tomorrow, and you're welcome to join any of them. And the full agenda is available on the screen. That will be flashed later. Now, for this session, we are very pleased to have Choi from the Economic Development Board and Charlie Lim, he's an artist, Singaporean artist, of course based in Singapore, to be conversing about how Web3 is transforming the creative industry. So, Choi, I'll hand it over to you.
Shall we?
Yeah, sure.
Good morning, everybody. How's everyone doing? Good, not too bad. No one's looking at the charts and the market. I just wanted to add to what Alps was saying that, you know, with the market doing as it is, the pieces are actually going for cheaper now if you convert to fiat. So maybe that can add to a bit. Today we're going to talk about, of course, how Web3 is transforming the creative industry. Very nascent space, as we know. If you guys were here this morning, actually, Charlie was singing for us, performing for us, and one of the songs he was talking about was, you know, how we should all be holding and be the diamond hands and be the famine. I would say track 2 could be a let's dollar cost average all the way to 0. That's my suggestion for the next song. But anyway, jokes aside, let me give a quick introduction. So my name is Choi, head up Singapore EDB team in Europe and in the UK. And together with our other partners, SG Innovate, as well as Singapore Global Network, we basically try to draw the bridge between Singapore, Southeast Asia, as well as UK and Europe across different sectors, but especially tech. But let me just jump in right into it. I think I would like, you know, Charlie to just introduce himself. I can do a job, but he would probably do a better job than me. And we have Charlie here because he's both a singer-songwriter, but he's also an innovator in the tech space and thinking and executing how he's using Web3 to try to transform the creative industry. But I'll let him give a short introduction of himself first. Charlie.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Does this work? 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey. Hi, everyone. I don't know if any of you were here earlier this morning, but it's nice to see new faces. I'm a singer-songwriter, producer. I've been doing music for a really long time, about 15 years. And I was signed with both indie and major labels, and I just started an artist collective DAO not too long ago. So we're here thanks to EDB to you know, have a chat, and I'm more than happy to speak to anyone after this as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I just want to jump into the topic, right? Earlier, if you hear for the first panel, there was a bit of a talk about, you know, crypto, Web3, and I love this code, so I'm just going to repeat it. You know, crypto is more than just a crypto exchange. Web3 is more than crypto, and blockchain is a technology that's more than Web3. It's important to distinguish the different layers of the stack. And of course, in Web3, we're talking about decentralized philosophy of the internet in terms of the ownership, transparency, and immutability. And as we know, you know, putting crypto and the market aside and the prices aside, for us in Singapore, it's very important to look at the use case of the technology and whether it makes sense or not. And in that vein, obviously looking at the creative industry, there are things about the industry that, you know, perhaps could benefit from the Web3 technology. So Charlie, I would like you to maybe talk a little bit more about the Great Wave, which, like you mentioned, is the DAO that you have set up and you run and you co-founded. Would love to hear about the inspiration. What exactly is the use case? What was the problem that you're trying to solve? What need were you trying to fulfill?
Wow, that's big loaded questions. I guess I should preface by saying that I don't think that blockchain or Web3 is like the silver bullet to solving all the problems in our world, let alone, you know, and or on the music industry. I think it's rife with problems. And I think the Web3 space itself is incredibly noisy and problematic. And I think it will take a long time before we actually get to this kind of utopian, you know, techno kind of ideal, you know, listic kind of thing that we envision it to be. So yeah, that's just my own take on the whole space right now. For me, being signed with, you know, both major labels and being an independent artist, I found both ends of the spectrum to have their own limitations and problematic kind of issues when you hear stories about artists being, kind of signed with really, really long contracts, and they don't get the support that they need. They're not prioritized because they're just very small fish in a giant ecosystem. I kind of went through that whole thing and just kind of saw it for what it was. Thankfully, got out of my deal. So we wanted to try something different using this kind of decentralized collective way, which I think DAOs can learn a lot from in terms of governance and kind of giving people equity and empowering artists through this new mechanism, which can't be done without crypto, right? So I think the whole point of it and the premise is that at the end of the day, the art still comes first and the artist still come first, right? And the crypto allows the part where we can democratize risk sharing and investment, right? So I think that's incredibly empowering, and anyone can kind of support their favorite artists or this collective / brand that we're trying to grow. So yeah, we just started it late last year. We've raised a pool of funds and we've commissioned work, and I guess the idea is that we commission. It's kind of like a paid feature right now, so we can work out different models. It's really flexible. But for our first proof of concept, we've actually just done like a commission fee where we pay artists to come collaborate on the track with another artist that they really like and respect, get a producer and engineer, we pay for all of that. And then they choose a proportion of that fee to reinvest into the collective so that they have an equity in it as well. So that's something that I think I would be interested in if the record label actually, hey, Charlie, like, welcome to the family, and here are some stock options, right? So it's kind of that similar thing which crypto allows us to do. I think that's quite interesting for artists. We don't tie anybody down with long bloated contracts. Everything's done on a project basis. Yet they're still incentivized to do well because they own part of the collective, right? So if the project goes well, they do well as well. And we don't get the artists we don't need them to invest out of their own pocket. So there's very low risk involved for them.
Yeah, that's super interesting, right? Because what I'm hearing, there are two aspects of it which really Web3 can help you. One, to really disintermediate some of the labels, which we know, it's probably quite a little bit problematic. The second is obviously be a bit more grown up, organic, and collective. I do want to, deep dive a little bit into the DAO, the mechanics of it, right? So can you talk us through, sort of, especially some of us that are not too familiar with the music industry, can you talk us through perhaps the different stakeholders that the DAO or the collective tries to pull in, and how each one of them sort of plugs into the DAO, and obviously what is the operating model, if you can sort of do that?
I guess once again I should preface the whole thing by like saying, this all these buzzwords, decentralization and DAOs and whatnot. I think a lot of them are ideals, and decentralization is a spectrum, right? I personally think that a complete, if we started everything in complete democracy and the complete decentralization, it would just be chaos and nothing will get done. So I think it's the ideal that we want to move towards, and we have to decentralize over time and kind of give more artists more power over time for them to run with their own projects. I think that's the ideal that we're trying to move towards. So yeah, it's a really simple idea, really, if you think about it. And we're not here to try and like change the world. I think the world's changing so fast already, but we want to be nimble enough to be able to adapt accordingly. So we're not going to say, we're going to not release our music on, streaming platforms and whatnot. We'll still be able to have give people access to the work that we put out, but we're also able to get them listed on Web3 music platforms as they start developing. As we grow this as a brand, we'll be able to be nimble and adapt accordingly and form partnerships. And that's the goal,
Yeah, so earlier you spoke about, the proof of concept, the Waterfall album, as I understand it. Do you want to describe a little bit more about that, work in progress, or something that's already been rolled out, and how does that work?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's a very simple concept right now. It's just getting artists on board to collaborate on singles, and then we have a little EP called Waterfall, and then we might put out music on streaming platforms, put out physical work together with NFTs. But yeah, at the end of the day, the music comes first, right? And even with NFTs, I'm also like not completely sold on many of the ideas that are going on right now, personally. And even within the DAO, we all have differing opinions. But one thing that we do have, we just launched, is actually the governance NFT. So basically, when you want to have governance of the DAO, you basically have to invest in the liquidity pool, right? People here in DeFi might know what that means. So, but the NFT basically acts as a container, like a membership card, for you to have a certain weightage of voting power, right? Which acts as well as an investment, but also your power to vote for things in the DAO. And if you want to come on board as a, to whether as a volunteer or to be, an arts worker, designer, that's how we onboard you as well. Yeah. So, for example, we have a creative director right now, and he's choosing to get paid a certain amount in tokens and also fiat. Yeah, so it's besides artists, we can also get other people who want to come on board and help with marketing, creative direction, video, visuals, etc.
Because that on-off ramp is still quite important, right? As we see today, you have the volatility of the cryptocurrencies in the market. So it's not surprising to see, some stakeholders come on board and, they want that kind of split between crypto and fiat. And I guess that's what you mean, that, we'll never eventually go on to a fully decentralized Web3, at least not in the near future, but it would be what some of us know as Web 2.5, a mixture between, SandFi and DeFi. How has, I just want to, take a step back beyond just the Great Wave and the DAO and the Waterfall EP. What's the response like from the rest of the music industry? Because again, you're very plugged into the traditional music industry with the labels as an indie. How has the rest of the industry responded? And yeah, what's the response like?
I guess there's a lot of FOMO going around, which is, I guess, in a way, a good sign, where the labels are just trying to scramble and figure out what they can do in this space. But at the same time, big ships turn slow. So as a DAO or a small collective, we're able to, figure it out quickly and adjust accordingly. I don't know. I think that term, like, we are so early, it should be looked at in a more like careful light. And I don't think the move fast, break things kind of approach is appropriate, all the time. I think we should move into this space consciously and think about more longer term, sustainable projects, rather than just do it for the quick flip. Yeah, so we have to go in with these intentions and values in mind.
Again, so, another step back, because earlier you talked about NFTs, the tokenization of digital assets, and obviously behind you can see we try to do, showcase a use case of that for, art pieces, as NFTs. When it comes to the music industry, this may be a bit of a philosophical question now, right? So how do you see tokenization of music as NFTs? Is it something that works philosophically as, coming from the industry? Or is it something that, again, for digital art, we say there's a right-click save movement, right? Like, seriously, why do you need to own a digital asset when you can just right-click and save? And there's a right-click save cam there. Is there equivalent in music, or is this something you think that is ripe and can be tokenized over time?
I don't know. I think a lot of it would then depend on the infrastructure that we're building right now for that, for those, certificates, right? Or those proof of authenticity to be able to exist. Yeah. So I think a lot of it right now can be, huge overpromises that will end up to nothing. That's why it's so speculative. But I do think there's definitely a place for the tech, for verification, immutability, and whatnot. The idea and the concept of ownership is what's being contended right now, which I find very fascinating. And I myself go through a lot of crypto critique, which is rampant and kind of in vogue right now as well, to kind of bash crypto. And I find it very fascinating, as opposed to 2014, 15, when this whole decentralization movement was coming on board, and we never imagined it to become the space that it is now. I think we should be listening to the critique going on and see if we can find a good middle ground. I personally think the regulation and whatnot, it's inevitable, and we just need to kind of make sense of it and come to an agreement together. It's going to be really messy, but I do see a lot of potential in the tech still. Yeah, so I think it's good to be cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to the first point that we make, is about really the use case and the application that matters most, right? Not everything needs to be decentralized as a broad stroke. I like the point that you mentioned. Of course, I must say that, coming from EDB, that regulation is probably quite clear, because I think it gives that kind of collective agreement from societies, not just like individual governments, but collective agreement on what is appropriate, how are consumers protected, what is considered asset, what is considered a security. I think this, there's still a lot of mixed up. There's a lot of blurring of lines between the different assets, so that's not good. At this point, I just want to, of course, leave some time. And we have a big crowd, so again, thank you for coming, and a lot of you are standing. So I want to make this as interactive as we can. We'd like to take questions from the floor, for sure. If anyone has, for sure. Super, before I finish, this is the response that any moderator likes. Not awkward silence, but a frantic wave of hands. So do we have a mic here, or I can just pass you mine, actually? It's probably too crowded, so.
Speak really loud.
There we go, yeah.
Hi, I was actually really curious to know how just concretely voting works in your DAO. Like, just can you, as concretely as possible, say like how that works?
In terms of...
Because you were talking about, okay, so everyone puts into the liquidity pool,
Yep.
you get an NFT that's sort of your digital membership card or your thing, but I actually don't know anything about the concrete mechanics. So how do you vote on any decision or like anything that comes before government?
So any DAO member can just kind of raise what they want to, raise up, and then we can just take a snapshot of it and just get people to vote, and then you'll be able to connect your wallet, see how many tokens you have, and then you'll be able to vote on something that you think should be done in the DAO.
How long does it take
Yeah.
usually after the person sends a message to,
In the group chat in the Discord. I don't know. It really depends on the situation, but we give it a window of like a week or so. Yeah. For now, everything's kind of done within the community, and we discuss internally. I think that the challenging part is like when things become too decentralized and everybody has an opinion. How do you govern? I think there's a lot of literature out there, about DAOs and many differing opinions on how things can be executed in the best way possible that balances all parties, right? So I think at the end of the day, we're like an incubator, but at the same time, we still look long-term for profitability, so because of that, I think things are aligned. There are some overlaps with like co-op movements, in terms of the DAO kind of structure, right? But I think this allows to get stuff done quicker. And I think based on the experience of like the last 6 months since we started the liquidity pool, I think most people are actually happy to just go like, we trust the developers, we trust the founders, we trust the artists, right? And if there's anything, they can like chat about it, but there's no need to like go to like the tribal council so far at least. I think it'll be a good problem if we actually get there, right? And I think there's a lot of tech right now that third-party apps and whatnot that allow for voting processes, forms be created, that allow you to connect wallets and whatnot and make discussion a lot more easier rather than just having it all on like Discord, which is most of the time a mess. So I'm sure some of you can relate as well. So yeah, I think it's such an early, messy, noisy space. So I think it's good to be gentle and considerate as we move forward.
So maybe I'll just expand on that as well. Perhaps what has been, or what do you foresee some of these DAO proposals to be? Are they like really big decisions that affect the whole collective, or are you talking more smaller tactical things? What do you see they could possibly be?
I think it could be anything from like diversification of work, for example. It could be more stuff that we make for public good as well. We don't necessarily have to focus everything on just like profitability as well. So if we can set aside a fund for more incubation for younger artists, who we know might not have as much of a platform or opportunity, but if we can empower them as well to get some work commissioned. I'm just thinking like, $1,000 is worth a lot to a band who's looking for an advance, but they can't get signed, in say like Philippines or Vietnam. They won't be able to get their album going, but that could empower them a lot. So it's also up to people to come up with ideas or ways to empower artists.
And you
Yeah.
mentioned one word in your answer to the lady here that I want to pick on, which is community, right? And of course, we take inspiration from some of the early NFTs that came out, Bored Apes, for example. We know that it's not just an asset, but it's sort of a badge of honor. It proves who you are, identity, and of course builds that community if all of us own a Bored Ape NFT. Do you see that happening in the creative and music industry, that because all of us own something, an NFT, or we are part of a DAO, beyond the tangible things, the tangible mechanisms that can happen, it also improves the intangible side of things, that you feel a stronger sense of identity and community? Do you think that happens beyond what is already possible, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, coming from like as an artist, right? It's like, how do you value work sometimes, right? So, and I think in a way I would argue that so much work and art and it's priceless, So I think it's a tricky space that we're in now. But I think people who want to join something, or if they want to collect something, they should be doing it mostly from the intent of because it actually means something to them, and they want to be part of that community, and they feel like they can contribute to it. Yeah, so definitely yes to your question, but it's more about the intent behind why you might want to join a community that I think should be thought of a bit more clearly.
Thank you. Any more questions from the floor? Yeah, we have a few. Maybe gentleman at the back.
Yeah, with NFTs, tokens, as well as cryptocurrency, a lot of the value is very much inflated at times.
Yes.
How do you, working in the music industry, really define an artist's work in a true value?
I mean, coming off what I just said, I guess it is very subjective. I think a lot of it is determined by the market, I guess, right, and what goes viral or not these days. But I think the power of what Web3 can unlock is creating new audiences and markets and niche audiences of super fans that might be able to support an artist, right, without you having to. It's a bit of a sad situation now where like artists are going to, and labels are telling artists like you can only make it if you make it on TikTok, and that's so sad. Like for an artist, like okay, now I have to be a content creator. I can't just work on my craft and my music. I have to be a viral superstar, and I think we're looking for new options and new platforms to kind of come together and say, hey, why don't we try something different? And I hope that answers your question. Because if I can properly answer your question, I also wouldn't be here. Because, but I'd love to have a chat with you later. So, yeah, thank you.
Great making connections. And again, it goes back to the point about, not all intermediaries are bad, but, in some cases, it's better to disintermediate and be able to reach the audience directly and not be at the mercy of what big aggregators tell you to do.
I think middlemen are incredibly important, and curators are incredibly important. I think it's more about just the fact that they have a share in everything right now, and it's just a bit lopsided. And if we can take a bit of agency back, and I think that's that's good.
Yeah, it's much more philosophical, right? It's about, like you say, the power asymmetry, that power to the creatives, right? Get a little bit back of the power and the agency. Sorry, I think maybe I'll just go in turn. I think you have a question there, gentleman in white.
Yeah. What do you think is driving the movement forward more? Is it the empowerment of what Web3 offers, or the creative kind of pursuit? Because I feel like some people are obviously very passionate about what creative applications can be achieved with Web3, but then obviously everyone's got to make money, everyone's got to have business, and artists have got to own their craft, right? So from your discussions, which one do you think is the biggest driver?
I think it's a bit of both. I think a lot of people are just reacting to trends right now and have been for some time. And I think that's not necessarily a good thing, because things will keep changing. The infrastructure and the rails to blockchain building will keep changing, right? So I think we have to adapt accordingly and see how things evolve. I think the financialization of everything is a double-edged sword, right? So you get a lot of scams and a lot of quick flips and whatnot, and that's something that I personally am concerned about, and we want to try and avoid that. I think we all should.
A gentleman in the blue jacket, please.
You're talking about TikTok and intermediaries and curators. What do you think, and probably in terms of tools for creators, do you think they have been developed? Are they needed? And what do you think they should bring to the creator in order to monetize and live from their creators?
Right. Well, I think like the ability for people who who are not developers, but to be able to create their own smart contracts, to be able to say that, okay, I'm going to give my producer this split in perpetuity, copyright issues, whatnot. I think if things are all on chain, right, I think that would be perfect, because a lot of the problems that we have right now, people not getting their due, the value that they've, and the effort that they put in, they're not getting in return. If we can, if everything was on chain, I think life would be a lot simpler. But we're not there yet. I think getting there is the tricky part right now. So yes, we do need a lot more help, in building infrastructure with music and the arts.
Thank you. I think we have a question, maybe? Lady in black?
So we talked about like empowerment, agency, and tools. How present? No, we've talked about like empowerment and agency and autonomy for creators made possible via tools, future tools, current tools. Like how important or present is data analytics for you right now as a way to also, access a space without being a developer or being someone who has a technical background?
I guess the interpretation of it will be key, right? I think right now you can be slapped with, get all these spreadsheets and telling me, where my streams are coming from and my 0.0001 cents coming from this place and whatnot, but I have no way to interpret that data. And a lot of it is not actionable. I can't go I have 1 million streams coming from Taiwan, but when I do a show there, I can't sell out a theater. I think a lot of artists have that issue right now. And if there's a way that we can kind of bridge that gap a bit more, and that's not necessarily a Web3 problem, it's just a problem with tech in general,
Absolutely. We're running out of time, but I think we have time for one last question. I think there was a question around there, but maybe that was answered. But if not, we have one here, right at the back with a blue T-shirt. I'm sorry. Okay, we'll take both. We'll take both. Charlie, very popular. So blue T-shirt and then gentleman in a brown jacket.
So in the current structure or the previous structure, like for artists, we have to follow the guidelines of what the record labels put out, positive, negative, right?
Yep.
As you described. So with your DAO, do you have guidelines, or do you leave the artists to be free to go along, and these are the tools that they have access to, or do you actually say this is what you need to do with a bit of freedom? How does it function?
It's pretty loose at the moment, to be honest. I guess because I kind of am starting the thing, it is kind of it has to start off centralized because a select group of people are coming in. But as more artists come in, they start contributing and saying, hey, why don't we try something different? Like our first release, it's slightly more like alt, R&B, pop, singer-songwriter, around that genre. But we're more than happy to start exploring different styles and whatnot. So it just depends who wants to run it. Most of the time, it's just getting people to do the work. that's the hard part. I think artists, and I say that I speak on behalf of myself as well, so sometimes we just want to be told what to do, and we're not taking our own initiative to try new things. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. We're more than happy to we just want to work with good people, good artists, and let them run the thing, and we'll try and fund it as much as we can. Yeah.
Last but not least, gentleman in brown.
Synthetic music based upon emotion and sentiment data generate the next big star?
I really hope not. I think there is definitely really cool stuff out there, like generative music. It's going to get better and better, but I still think in the same way that watching a really good movie or a drama and whatnot, I think we're still a little far away from getting an AI to write something that would really touch the soul. And I believe that, as human beings, that's something that's what's special about us and how we can relate to each other. So I think that part's always, the human aspect of it is the most important. Yeah.
Well, that's a great way to end this panel, Charlie. the human aspect, what touches the soul, is still most important. And I think this panel has been great. Thank you for the questions. I mean, we have questions just intersecting between art, music, tech, how humans organize, how we resource. I feel like we can go on forever, and then we have to, do a PhD about that. But Charlie, last words. Tell us how we can find your work, both your music work as well as the Great Wave. Tell us how we can find you.
Sure. My name is Charlie Lim, Lim, and you can just find me on all the usual, socials and whatnot. But the project that we are working with now is called thegreatwave.io. That's the website. That's our little logo. And it's just early days for us. We have released this thing called a governance NFT, which is like that membership card thing, and you can purchase the LP that way without having to worry about the DeFi mechanics and whatnot. The document's all there. We're happy to have a chat more about it. Thank you all so much for your time. This has been really interesting and exciting for me. I've never done anything like this. I'm usually just singing.
Do you want to end off with a song?
Oh dear. I wish I could, but I think we're out of time.
Who supports that idea? We can. No, okay. Right. Well, thank you, everybody. Again, you can talk to Charlie. Check out Bright Hall's NFT art exhibition for charity. So all for not all goes towards charity. Or talk to us, the Singapore team, if you are looking to do something in Singapore. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good week.